All right, Kyle Shanahan, always the talk of football, whether it's college or the NFL. For the last few weeks, it's been for different reasons than maybe we've used to it being in years past. People trying to figure out if there's something wrong with the Niners. 2 weeks running in The Athletic, in his article in which he breaks down the best and not the best coaching decisions in football, the 49ers have appeared in situations where their opponent, the defense, has gotten the best of them. Ted Wynn, The Athletic, and his YouTube channel. He is on the cutting edge of what's happening in football. I know because I have other coaches send me clips and send his clips around. So, Ted, not used to seeing Kyle Shanahan in this light, but it's a thing it's a moment that calls for an expert. So we can talk about what you wrote, but just what do you make of the position the 49ers offense specifically is in right now?
Yeah, when I'm critical about the Niners offense, a small part of it is schematic. Like Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in football. You know that. The coaches you talk to know that because they're copying his plays.
Yeah.
So when I don't think I know better than Kyle Shanahan. Like he's one of the best offensive minds in this era, and the Niners have been one of the top offensive teams in the league for a long time, and their numbers are still good. They're just not what we're used to seeing as like an explosive offense that nobody can stop, and they obviously has had problems. And the one problem that I have fixated on in the last couple weeks, and I've been kind of tracking this since the Super Bowl, is just their philosophy of throwing hot. And what that means is when a team is blitzing you and they bring an extra rusher that you can't block, the quarterback will throw the ball to a short route because you're basically replacing the blitz. So wherever the blitz is coming from, you're throwing short to this route, and you're hoping that guy could break a tackle, or maybe he's uncovered and could get a first down. And having that philosophy frees up the quarterback from having to learn all these protections, having to try to sort out the blitzes. And that's kind of the Niners' philosophy. That's why Jimmy Garoppolo played well. That's why Brock Purdy fit right into this offense, because he's really good at doing that. But the problem is, and it works 95% of the time. It's a great philosophy. It works a lot of the time. But the 5% times where it doesn't work, it seems to be in really critical situations. And it's hurt the Niners. It hurt the Niners a little bit in the Super Bowl. It hurt the Niners against Tampa Bay, but they ended up winning the game anyways. And it hurt the Niners at the end of the Seahawks game. So I just wonder if this keeps happening, do the Niners switch philosophies? And it doesn't have to be a whole philosophical change. It could just be, all right, in these critical situations, we want to do something different, and we want to give Brock Purdy some more tools to adjust to protections.
Plenty more good stuff coming from Ted in a minute, but I have to tell you that this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. Use the code GUY, have a good time, support the show. When you go to Prize Picks and use the code GUY, and there's a link in the description, all you got to do is make a $5 lineup, and Prize Picks will immediately put $50 into your account. It's so easy. You can just jump right in. You can make a quick lineup like this one. Thursday night, George Pickens, more than 38.5 receiving yards. Purdy, more than 251.5 or less if you want, given what Ted's saying. Maybe things are about to turn. Jordan Love, less than 249.5 passing yards. If you're not watching this on a game day and you're like, I need some other action guy, what do I do? Great. One thing I've been loving in the NBA is live rebounds. I love doing rebounds. Look at this. I just hit 20 paid 110. Prize Picks code GUY. Back to Ted Wynn. So it became a conversation after the Super Bowl, right? And it sounds like what you're saying is right before Jake Moody sets the Super Bowl record for a field goal that gave the Niners the lead, they had a 3rd down and 4. People remember McDuffie comes on pressure between the left guard and left tackle. Ayuk looks open for a minute, but Purdy can't get him the ball. You mentioned the Seattle game, the Bucks game. I think, the Arizona game, week 5, they're down by 1 with 1 minute and 15 seconds left. 1st and 10 near midfield. The Cardinals delay the 5th and 6th blitzer. The Niners have 6, but Kaiser White comes free, hits Brock. People remember the ball goes fluttering, and, the Niners end up losing that game. You're saying all of these things are connected, and it may be that in the offseason, defensive coaches realized what Steve Spagnuolo did in the Super Bowl to the 49ers. And now even though Kyle builds it, because Kyle said this too when he talked to Kawakami, we can play some of it. And it's kind of what you just said. Like he accepts there's a small percentage of times that this won't work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But it sounds like now everyone's in the biggest moment exposing it.
Yeah. And part of it is it goes back before Spagnuolo when the Niners played the Ravens. They played Mike McDonald, who is a big sim pressure guy. And you remember the offense struggled in that game as well. So I don't know if they're exactly copying the blueprint from Spagnuolo, but this McDonald tree has really spread out throughout the league. Like you have 6 different teams running it because of the coaches that are from that tree. It's just kind of everywhere now. And it's kind of a trend now. So those rare times where you do need to change a protection are coming a little bit more often. Brian Flores is another guy who does it. And we know the Niners has had struggles with him as well. And I think the conversation is a little the mainstream conversation that I see a lot of people talking about is a bit incorrect because everybody's talking about audibles and giving Brock Purdy the power to audible, but he does have audibles in his system and he does have the power to audible, but it's not audible to me is like if you change to play, but it's not about changing a play. It's just about adjusting the protection, which is a very normal thing quarterbacks do. The Niners have their center call to protections, and Shanahan has said that, and Purdy has said he has the power to change a protection if he wants to, but if you're not emphasizing it and you're not coaching your quarterback to do it, even though he has the power to do it, it's not going to happen. So I think that's just the adjustment that needs to be made.
So the question then, Ted, is how quickly can you fix it? You know, everyone saw Ben Kurt's tweet the other day, the quarterback who played for Shanahan. They kind of not alluded to this, talked about the same thing you've been talking about. And so the question is like, can he fix it this week or is this an off-season project? How fast can it happen, you think?
Yeah, I think not only Ben Kurt, there's been other former players that have talked about this. Tom Brady brought it up on the broadcast, which kind of really confirmed what, I was thinking this and I thought this was a problem. And then when Tom Brady said it, it really kind of confirms it for me. If the greatest quarterback of all time has this criticism
during the Bucs game, right? Not this.
Yes.
During the Bucs game. Yeah.
During the Bucs game, he said basically if you bring an edge pressure to this side, it's going to come unblocked, and you don't want to get stuck throwing shorter sticks because you're throwing hot in critical situations. So basically, I think this is a problem that could get or a flaw that could get fixed pretty quickly. I think it'll take a bit of adjustment period because it takes a different mindset. And again, we're talking about 1 or 2 plays a game. But these 1 or 2 plays could make a difference. And Shanahan has coached in systems and for coaches that don't like throwing hot routes. So he knows the adjustments that need to be made if he wants to do it. He coached for John Gruden, who hates throwing hot routes. He likes to change the protection and throw the ball deep. So he has the knowledge to do it. I don't know what it'll take for him to change his philosophy because it does work 95% of the time when he throws hot. Sometimes Deebo Samuel breaks a tackle, Kittle breaks a tackle, and it goes for 40 yards. But it's just in these situations, these 1 or 2 plays a game against these really good pressure teams, like maybe it's worth it to adjust your offense a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have to play it, but I think what's really interesting about this situation is that it's come up right after Kyle explained very clearly. I think that's what's cool about some of what you've written is like this stuff comes from Kyle's mouth. Mm-hmm. You mind if I play this real quick? He was on Kawakami's podcast, Tim Kawakami's podcast this offseason. And I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's long, but here's just take a listen to a part of this. And he just lays it out really clearly.
And I started my career with John Gruden, who told his philosophy was we will never throw hot. And so we worked on every blitz pickup. And the best guy I've ever seen in the history of football deal with it, that I wasn't with, but watching the film and John tell me, was Rich Gannon. And he was unbelievable at it. And so he never tried to throw hot. Well, You have to have a fake dummy count. You have to have all this fake stuff. You got to work on it all week, and that's just a philosophy. Then I went to Gary Kubiak, and they didn't allow the quarterback to change protections. And I was the quarterback coach, so I'm trying to figure out how this is going to work because all I knew was Gruden, and we changed everything. And now Gary didn't want to change anything. And I'm like, oh my God, like how many times are we going to be hot all year? It came up, but not what I thought. I was like, holy cow, we didn't have to coach the quarterback on all that stuff. And you know what? It hurt us 3 or 4 times. But man, we were a lot better at other stuff. How will I be when I get my opportunity? And I see myself somewhere in the middle. But I also know I had to put offenses in working for other people where either you weren't allowed to throw hot or you had to change the protection. So I've seen both ways. But I've been forced to build an offense that you don't have to put that on the quarterback. And then as I start to get quarterbacks and try all this stuff, you realize, man, that really helps a guy. And it makes him play cleaner. You don't put all the pressure on him. Let us solve the problem. And so when that ball snaps, you can figure out how to hang in that pocket with all these guys trying to kill you and throw in some tight windows and play at a high level. And to me, that's the key to everything.
Yeah, and he's right. Like this philosophy works. Purdy's good at it, and they've had success. So, but the problem is these situations are showing up a little bit more. Like I said, there's teams that are pressuring more. There's teams that are running a lot more simulated pressures, and they're kind of fooling the Niners into throwing hot when in these critical situations that you don't want to throw short of sticks in.
So I guess the question too is like, is this showing up with the Shanahan tree is big. Is it showing up for all of them, or is it Kyle who's bearing the brunt of it for some reason? Have the other guys adjusted to it?
One team that I'm watching, and I'm actually writing an article about this with the Rams, and I'm working together with Jordan Rodriguez about how Matthew Stafford has kind of changed Sean McVay's philosophy. And I need to go back and see and I suspect that Jared Goff was also a hot read quarterback too, where he was throwing hot against these blitzes. And now you have Matthew Stafford. He's making all sorts of checks at the line of scrimmage. He's changing things, and he's throwing the ball downfield. And obviously, Purdy's not at the level of Stafford yet. He hasn't seen that much football, but he's getting a lot of good reps. The benefit of having a quarterback around for a long time, and presumably Purdy's going to be there for even longer, is that you could start trusting him with a little bit more. And Shanahan has made it clear that Purdy has the power to do this. But again, if you're not going to coach the quarterback to do this and you're not going to emphasize it, it's not going to happen, even if he has the freedom to do it.
Yeah. I know you've got a couple plays we can look at for people listening to the podcast on my podcast feed. You can go to the YouTube channel and watch and see some of what Ted's talking about. I've wondered if like the Arizona game week 5, they're in a 2-minute offense, so they're moving, but they snap the ball with 33 seconds. So the coach to quarterback comms is still working. And I've wondered, is it reasonable to expect in that situation for Shanahan to stop like, hey, I know we're in a rush, but let's stop for a second and let's just fix this one protection this time? Or do you think that there's too much going on to ask to manage it that way, that specifically?
I would probably have to go back and look at that. I guess it's possible. I'm not very good on what goes on with the communication, especially in a 2-minute drill, but I suppose it's possible. But I don't really remember the play you're talking about, so I would probably have to go back and take a look at that play.
And the other thing with that play is it's not the pressure comes late. Like the rushers 5 and 6 aren't. I have to go back and look too. I don't think they're at the line of scrimmage the way some of these other teams have done it. But okay, let's see some of what you got, Ted.
Okay, we're gonna look at the Tampa Bay game, and this is the play where after this happened, Brady brought it up where he said against this Niners defense, if you bring an edge pressure, you're getting a free rusher, and you don't want to get stuck throwing short of the sticks in critical situations. And right here, the Bucs are going to bring an edge pressure from the bunch, the top of the screen. And then on 3rd and 9, Purdy's going to throw to Jennings, and the defense is right on top of it. They're on these type of blitzes. They're playing off coverage, but they're just watching out for those short routes. And you can see Purdy makes a quick decision to throw hot. He's replacing the blitz, and throws the ball to Jennings, and he gets tackled short of sticks. And then we're going to move on to this following week against the Seahawks on 3rd and 11, 2:58 remaining. And the Niners have a 4-point lead. And if they could get a first down, they could start bleeding clock and possibly get into field goal range, or maybe even get another first down and end the game. But again, you're going to end up with 3 receivers on one side. The Seahawks are going to show pressure, and the Niners have 6 in the block, but they make it look like they're bringing 7, but they're actually only rushing 5. But again, Purdy thinks that he has to throw hot. He throws to Jennings, and again, he gets tackled way short of sticks. And the protection call isn't necessarily wrong here, because they actually have enough blockers for these 5 rushers that come, because you can see the 2 defensive linemen actually drop out. But there's actually an error between Aaron Banks and Trent Williams. Like right here, Aaron Banks gets that defensive end, and Trent Williams should push out to number 20 over there, and he would have been protected. But even if they executed this protection correctly, Purdy already made up his mind to throw hot. And that's just part of the philosophy. To me, this is part of the philosophy of the Niners, where they're not trying to sort out these pressures. They're not trying to use a dummy count to try to get the defense to show its hand. It's just like, as soon as they see pressure, the ball's coming out hot. So to me, I just think that's an issue that that could get corrected. And if they see it more in some more critical situations, maybe that convinces Shanahan to kind of move away from that philosophy a little bit. And again, it doesn't have to be a wholesale change. Just in these critical situations, just make that adjustment.
Let me see if I can show you the Arizona play we're talking about here. It's so this is that big enough?
I can see it.
Here we go. Okay, so this is, hopefully it's a little pixelated here, but so this is a first down. This is like whatever I said, 1:15 left. Arizona's just taking the lead.
And this is no huddle, so they're running up to the line, right?
Correct. Yep, you can see here. They're moving, and Arizona's going to bring pressure here from that right hash. Both of those guys are going to come.
Yeah, I think that is a more difficult situation, because pre-snap you can't even see the blitz coming until. So Shanahan is in his ear, but then at the point where the ball is snapped, they're not showing pressure. So there's no pre-snap read, and there's no time to really make a pre-snap read. So in this situation, I think the protection just has to sort itself out, and obviously the execution was bad here.
Yeah, I mean, again, like they have enough here, right? They've got 6 to block 6, but that's the other thing. When you go back and look at the Super Bowl, they had, remember, George Kittle was in the backfield, just he was to Purdy's right, and the pressure came from Purdy's left. And I don't have that play pulled up, but that was one where the hot throw was a first down, probably, right? To Ayuk off that left hash is just the pressure. It's easy for me to say that from the couch, right? There's a guy in Purdy's face, but it just feels like they're getting hit at the wrong time, man. Consistently.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where maybe sometimes using a hard count, and Shanahan mentioned it, maybe using a dummy count just to see the defense jump, and you can kind of see, the pressure's coming from there. I could be a little bit more prepared for it. That kind of stuff helps. So, just wonder if they make the adjustment eventually, if it keeps rearing its ugly head in these bad times.
I know you mentioned, did you? Oh, you did something on LaFleur. I was watching on your YouTube about how he creating like space for guys. And the Niners, I'm sure you've seen this week, they're now 30th in the league or 32nd, I guess, in average separation of target at 3 yards. And their yak is way down, which makes sense, right? If you're not getting separation, you're not going to have space to run after. Their yak over expected is 7th in the league. But they're one of 3 teams with less than 1,000 actual yak yards. I mean, I don't know. That's a different thing than what we're here to talk about. But what do you make of the Niners not getting anybody open? Is it as simple as, well, McCaffrey's been out and Ayuk's out, so those are guys that get open? That's not really how
Yeah.
Jennings gets open, right? You throw to Jennings when he's covered,
Exactly.
generally.
Yeah. Yeah, part of it is Christian McCaffrey. When Christian McCaffrey was out, the teams just weren't afraid to play the Niners in man coverage. So they were seeing a lot more man. And when you're seeing man, it's a little harder to get those yak yards because you can't throw underneath and then run after the catch. And Debo just, he's never been a great separator. Seems like he's not separating as much this year. George Kittle is like the only real guy that could separate against man coverage for this team while McCaffrey's out. And McCaffrey doesn't quite look like the same explosive back just yet. Maybe he'll get some of that back. And Ayuk was their big separator. He was a guy that, if you're playing man coverage against Ayuk, then he could punish you. And because of the whole contract situation, he just never really quite got his footing in the beginning of the season. So it's like a perfect storm of things that were happening. I think we're seeing a little bit of a decline with Debo and Ayuk, like we mentioned, just really didn't get into the flow of the offense this season, and just not having Christian McCaffrey hurts. And Juwan Jennings, great player, is making a big jump this season, but he's never going to be a big separator himself, although he's a very effective player.
Yeah, it's not I don't think it's an accident, Ted, that like his 3 biggest games they lose. Like the Super Bowl, they lost. His 10 for whatever it was, 170 against the Rams, they lost. His 10 catches against Seattle, they lost. And Debo, the tunnel screens aren't working. The run game isn't working. None of it's working. It's working everywhere else.
Yeah, and
although their efficiency numbers are high.
Yeah, it's weird. I think Brock Purdy's a better quarterback than he was in the last couple of years, because more of the crux of the offense is on his shoulders now. They need him to scramble. He's throwing and another reason that the yak is down, he's throwing the ball downfield a lot further than he has in the past. He's not throwing short, and part of that is they're seeing man coverage, so you have to throw the ball a little bit deeper. His air yards are way above normal on non-blitz and blitz throws. So that's part of why you're not getting the yak. But it's just a perfect storm of things happening with his offense right now. And the protection thing is a small part of that, but I still have faith that this team can get it together. It's kind of jarring that it hasn't happened by now. But I think the tools are there, and I have faith Shanahan will figure this out.
How you feel about your Raiders?
That I don't have any faith in them figuring things out. It's just a mess over there. Antonio Pierce is maybe the worst game management coach in the league. And when you're a CEO coach, a CEO type of coach, you got to be excellent at game management, and you got to be excellent at hiring the right coaches. He already fired his offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. It's a mess, but at the very least, they're putting themselves in position to draft a quarterback, but it's not a great quarterback class at the same time.
You don't like Shador?
He's good, but I mean, like in a normal quarterback class, he might be like a late first round guy, and now he's getting pushed to the top 10. I mean, it's just, he's a good quarterback. He's poised, but there's just he doesn't have any elite physical traits.
Right.
And he's not that big too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
He gets hit a ton. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Ted, thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.